ACB is being pushed through, the Biden family is being found out, and the debates are being more and more profitable. I'm Josiah Everton, and this is The Glorious Rescue. Welcome back to another episode of The Glorious Rescue. We are very delighted to have you here. This is, I believe, our 40th episode, but if you are watching over on YouTube, this is our very first episode that is available for video. So whether you're listening over on our audio platforms on Spotify, Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or whatever those platforms may be, or if you're watching us over on YouTube, thank you so much for listening, for watching now. And if you want to head over on to YouTube, make sure to check us out. You can type in anchor.fm/Josiah Everton, and you can click the little YouTube icon to find us over on YouTube. Or you could also head on over to Instagram, hit the little link in the bio, and that will direct you right over to the YouTube channel. So first things first, we have lots to cover as always. So we are going to be jumping into the very first stories of today. The first one I did mention being ACB. For those of you who don't know, ACB is the nomination on behalf of President Trump. He recently appointed Amy Coney Barrett to fill that vacancy over on the Supreme Court, and it has been in the Senate Judiciary Committee and then most recently passed today. And now, according to the airing of the episode, I guess I should say yesterday, on Thursday, she was passed through the Senate Judiciary Committee and is now moving to the Senate floor. So make sure to be ready and tune in for that. We will continue to give you more updates as always. There were a little bit of stories about the Democrats trying to boycott it and the Republicans moving around that and kind of working around that in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And then it did end up following through, being pushed through. She was passed on by the Senate Judiciary Committee that is now moving to the Senate floor. So that's kind of the first update for you there. Next, I want to just very briefly talk about Hunter Biden, the Biden family, and a little bit of that corruption. This was something that we extraordinarily delved into in our last episode. We went in very depth discussion about all the Biden family, Hunter Biden specifically, his corruption, his ties to foreign governments, and that's really what we discussed for our last episode. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a brief update because it is very important as we move into the discussion about the most recent 2020 presidential debate that I'm excited to get into. So first, a couple different key importances that we must note. First of all, there's been a photo that has emerged of Democrat Joe Biden meeting with one of those foreign governments and one of the advisors in those foreign governments for one of Hunter Biden's associates. So this has now been corroborated by another witness. Yet another witness has given validity to those emails. If you remember in our last episode, we talked about those emails really giving credence to the fact that Hunter Biden has met with members of foreign governments or also has served on boards for large companies within those foreign governments while Joe Biden was vice president. A lot of interesting corruption, really, that I guess that we called out, we really discussed, and we really completely unraveled. So definitely check back on that last episode if you have not done so already. But just a couple brief updates. There's just more corroboration of those stories. One being someone who worked closely with Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. Basically, this corroboration, this witness, gave credence to exactly what those emails were stating. That Joe Biden is that quote-unquote big man, and that he is the one that they were referring to paying him his fair share. So, seeming to give more information, seeming to give more validity to the idea that Joe Biden was a part of this corruption. Another, I guess you could say, development in the story is the FBI. The FBI has now officially subpoenaed Hunter Biden's laptop, and we're going to hop over into the discussion about the debate where Joe Biden says that that laptop was a Russian plant, that the Russian government, I guess, planted that laptop on his son, Hunter Biden, so that it looked like he was the one being involved in all these different corruption problems. I guess that's what Joe Biden's story, that's what Joe Biden decided to go with. I don't know why, but that's what he said. So the FBI has now officially subpoenaed this Hunter Biden laptop because it has been in connection with money laundering and the money laundering investigation. So another corroboration of that. Another one. A whole nother instance of this was another report from the New York Post. The New York Post has gone ballistic on this Biden story, and I love it. But it says here that Fox News actually reported that one of the explosive email threads, some person on that email thread, allegedly involving Hunter Biden, has corroborated that veracity and the veracity of those messages which appear to outline a payout for former Vice President Joe Biden. So this individual, his name is Tony Bobulinski, and it says here that the facts set forth below are true and accurate. They are not in any form of domestic or foreign disinformation. He says, quote, any suggestion to the contrary is false and offensive. I am the recipient of the email published 7 days ago by the New York Post, which showed a copy to Hunter Biden and Rob Walker. That email is genuine. He says later on in his report, he says, what I'm outlining is fact. He says later that Joe Biden is the big guy. The reference is to Joe Biden. He says there's another email that directly calls the big guy JB. He says Hunter Biden on many occasions called his dad the big guy and frequently referenced asking him for his sign-off or his advice on various potential deals. So let me get this straight, Joe Biden. While you tout your story, that not only was yourself not involved, but that your son wasn't, that laptop on him was a Russian plant, and yet there are witnesses coming out on multiple occasions, on multiple different levels, saying that not only was your son involved, but he repeatedly asked you for advice, asked you for connections to members of foreign governments, to members high in businesses, in deep ties to foreign governments, while you, Joe Biden, were serving as Vice President of the United States. Another, I guess you could say, instance of the cover-up has been unraveled, and there's now officially a lawsuit by the Justice Department of the United States suing Google for the anti-competitive conduct, the idea of them, Google, all these other social media companies, trying to give a leg up to the left during the election. I think there's a lot of evidence of this, but now there's an official lawsuit from the Justice Department in regards to that. I think these are good developments, and I'm glad to see them. A quick statement made by President Trump, which I enjoyed, is when he was asked by a reporter why Donald Trump likes to label Joe Biden as a criminal. Why kind of his strategy, his PR stunts are to label Joe Biden as a criminal. Is that just to help him get elected, etc.? President Trump responded, he is a criminal. He's a criminal. He got caught. Read his laptop. And you know who's a criminal? You're a criminal for not reporting it. You are a criminal for not reporting it. Let me tell you something, Joe Biden is a criminal, and he's been a criminal for a long time, and you're a criminal, and the media for not reporting it. Donald Trump giving us fiery kickbacks against the media, really. This is true. The media, social media, they are giving cover-ups to the story we talked about extensively in our last episode, where they were basically hiding the link. You are not allowed to share that link over on all these different social media sites because they were hiding the story. Later, the NPR stated and reported that they did so because they felt like it wasn't an accurate story. But again, it goes against what their true definition is as a social media company or a public forum company. It is not a matter of whether or not you think it's true. Your job is to simply have certain guidelines to eliminate certain types of postings, but you're not there to filter information and judge what is true, what is false. That's the idea of what a mainstream media company is for. So two different types of companies, and yet you are trying to file as one and act as another. We talked about that in our last episode. Again, if you'd like to hear more on that, definitely head back and check out that episode. Now, I want to spend a little bit more time discussing the debate. There was one previous one, and then right about a week or two ago, there were town hall meetings. Not necessarily a debate, but separate town halls where they each discussed their policies. I made it very clear that I did not like the presidential debate. The very first one was awful. It really was. It was an embarrassment to public discourse in our country, and Joe Biden, Donald Trump, both of them should be held accountable for that, right? Not only that, but I would say that the vice presidential debate with Mike Pence and Kamala Harris was substantially better. It was a much higher quality of a debate. Not only was Pence portraying a very extraordinary portrayal, like I said, of what it means to be a conservative, to do so in a very tactful manner, and really to show the hypocrisy and the lies of the left. He did an extraordinary job at that. It was much more substantive when it comes to the actual issues. When it came to the actual issues, Kamala Harris and Mike Pence actually gave good representations of what their parties believed. Unlike I would get into right here, Joe Biden in his most recent debate yesterday, Thursday, where he didn't really portray what really is true about the Democratic Party. We're going to get into that. He did a little bit, he did not. But this debate was much more beneficial, much more substantive than the very first presidential debate. I appreciated that. I really do. It was nice to see an actual debate. Both of them were very civil. Both of them discussed the issues. Both of them were very pinpointed. And I think it actually was a much more civil and beneficial discussion, debate for the American people. We're going to get into a little bit of what happened, what the topics were that were discussed, and how it came out, what we think the verdict is. First of all, I would say that Donald Trump held his composure so much better. He did a much better job of keeping his temperament down, not interrupting. That might have been because they were cutting mics out when it wasn't their turn, but he did do a better job. I think it comes down to, really, if I were to label this debate in just a few sentences, I would say, first of all, Trump did a very good job being civil, and Joe Biden, come on, man, that's just not true. That is simply not true. That was the sum of Joe Biden. Come on, man. I mean, come on. That's just not true. That is simply not true. That was Joe Biden's summary. Donald Trump gave a lot of good pressure to Joe Biden and his answers, his skirting around of the questions, and then remained a lot more civil. So a few things. First of all, COVID. They discussed COVID. Basically, Trump's summary was, if we shut down our country, we will not have our country. Good statement, very true statement. And that's really what I would say the foundation of all of these COVID regulations comes down to. Do we believe that Americans have their own individual responsibility to protect themselves, the safety of themselves, others, their families? Or is that really government's job to come in and mandate that from every single person? So Donald Trump, good answer. Good answer, Donald Trump, because that really is a good crux. Joe Biden kind of basically, his whole entire argument was what could have been better. And I think Trump was trying to dial in the fact of hindsight is 2020. I'm not responsible for what China brought over. I'm responsible for how I acted with the knowledge that I had, and I think he really honestly did the best that he could. So Biden says, I don't look at it like Trump does. This was one of my favorite moments in the debate. He says, I don't look at it like Trump does. Trump looks at it like the red states have done well, the blue states have done poor. I don't look at it as red states and blue states. I look at it like the United States of America. By the way, if you look at the states that are doing poorly, it's the red states. That was literally what Joe Biden said within sentence to the very next sentence. He said, I'm not looking at it like red states and blue states. By the way, it's the red states that have done poorly anyways. So again, classic Joe Biden. But what Trump was trying to hone in on the fact is the idea that we didn't really know much. And he said very many times, I'm not blaming Fauci. I'm not even blaming you, Joe Biden, and I'm not blaming myself for the actions of China. Yes, we can hold ourselves responsible. He even said, I take responsibility, but no one necessarily knew all that we knew now, and we did do our best. Next, foreign policy. Joe Biden tries to give off this fake persona of being tough on foreign governments. This is simply not true. Joe Biden, that's simply not true. Joe Biden has been the easiest, most lax vice president, senator throughout his entire political career. He has been one of the most lax politicians on foreign governments. In fact, we know this from all the information that we have gotten over the last several weeks about him, his son, his entire family being close and in close ties with members of foreign governments and large businesses in foreign governments while serving in our national government. So, first of all, no, there's deep ties of corruption there that we have discussed extensively. But then secondly, you haven't. Your entire political career has not shown that. And you have had a large and long political career to do so. That again is what Trump focused in on. Another good point about Donald Trump is every time Joe Biden says, this is what I want to do, this is what would have been better, Donald Trump said, well, then why didn't you do it for decades while you were in office? Good points made by Donald Trump. He should have called out again, though, where have you been tough? And I think he did do that, but Joe Biden tries to give off this fake persona about being tough on foreign governments when he really is not. An example of this, he said, very pinpointed, he even gave the pointer finger. I know them and they know me. Okay, Joe Biden. Okay. When in reality, it's been Donald Trump who's put more sanctions on China, more sanctions on Russia, been tough on North Korea, has avoided war while doing also, has moved the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He's, again, avoided war from North Korea. He's been pulling our troops out of the Middle East where it's not necessary. He's worked in Vietnam. He's worked, again, like I said, in North Korea. He's been tough on China, been tough on Russia. In fact, most Americans are in very strong favor of Donald Trump's foreign policy. In fact, most Americans are in favor of Republicans in general and their policies, their beliefs on national security and foreign affairs. Nevertheless, Joe Biden trying to give that fake persona of who he was. And I think Donald Trump really nailed the fact when he said, I was left a mess. I was left an absolute mess. The Iran deal. I was left an absolute mess. The Iran deal. Huge example of that. An absolute mess. And Joe Biden trying to portray that he was tough. Next was medical insurance. And they talked a lot about medical insurance and socialized medicine. Joe Biden tried to say that you will not lose your private insurance while he expands Obamacare. And I'd simply like to say, yeah, just like we could keep our doctors too when we introduced Obamacare in the first place. No one really believes him. His move is towards socialized medicine, and Donald Trump correctly pointed that out. He says healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right. This is Joe Biden. That is the move of the Democratic Party. The move of the Democratic Party is not just expanding healthcare, government healthcare, while still allowing private insurance. The goal is to expand it so large that it pushes private insurance out. Socialized medicine, socialized healthcare. That is the goal of the Democratic Party. Everyone knows that. Joe Biden knows it. Kamala Harris knows it. AOC knows it. Ilhan Omar knows it. But Joe Biden won't admit it. Donald Trump knows it. We all know it. That is the move of the Democratic Party. It is a very socialist concept, a very socialist idea. But Joe Biden doesn't want to say it because he knows people are not as in favor of it. So he gets disliked from the far left for not promoting socialized healthcare. And then he gets distrust from the right because really we know he's being two-faced. So he says healthcare is not a privilege. This is a fundamental issue. Is healthcare a privilege or a right? We'll get into that a little bit more, but I would just say it's not a right. You have to work to provide for your own health. You have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You have all the rights that we've been discussing on the show throughout the Bill of Rights and then throughout our amendments. And you have all the rights that are not expressly stated in the Constitution for the federal government to operate within. Everything without are our rights as well. Healthcare is not included, but you have the right to have your own pursuit of happiness, to have your own personal responsibility to work, accrue, and amass wealth to provide for your own healthcare. It's not necessarily the duty of government to provide it for you. Anyway, so he tried to say he's not in favor of socialized medicine while promoting the idea of expanding nationalized healthcare. So next, he also says, Joe Biden, you forget who you're running against. Because again, Donald Trump correctly pointed it out. I am running against socialized healthcare, nationalized medicine. And Joe Biden says, that's not what I'm for. You forget who you're running against, man. Come on, man. But again, Donald Trump is right. He is not running against Joe Biden. He's running against a radical Democratic Party. We're not going to get into all of it. That is the relief package. Trump basically saying it's Nancy Pelosi who has been holding it up. And then obviously the Democrats saying it's the right holding it up. But Joe Biden actually says something good here. When he was talking about separation on the border and immigration, he says that all men and women are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Obviously, he didn't give that long of a quotation because he wouldn't be able to remember all of that, but he alludes to that. He references that statement, that we all have equal rights under the Declaration of Independence because they are given by God and it's government's sole responsibility to protect them. So that was a good thing. And then when he was talking about civil rights, when he was talking about people of different ethnic groups, he says that our nation, our history book, is not a rejection of those principles. It is simply us continuing to try to apply those principles and come more closely to those principles. That is a fundamental I agree with him on, that the problems we see in our nation are not because of the systems, but because we simply have not been able to fully apply those systems, those principles to our systems. And I would say we have now in American systems, we have applied those principles fully, and we have since the 1960s and 70s. And that's where I would disagree with Joe Biden because he would say that we have not. But the good fundamental foundation that he portrayed, that he expressly stated, is something I agree with. Again, it's not something that his vice president nor his entire Democratic Party would either. A few quick last notes that were discussed in the debate was Hunter Biden, and that's when Joe Biden said that the laptop was a Russian plant. I guess the Russians came in and planted the laptop on Hunter Biden. That's the story Joe Biden intended to go with. He also accidentally called Donald Trump Abraham Lincoln. It was some weird thing like Donald Trump said he has done more for the black community since Abraham Lincoln, and then Joe Biden says, well, since you're trying to call yourself Abraham Lincoln or something like that. It was a really weird reference, but he called Donald Trump Abraham Lincoln. Anyways, Donald Trump just came back with the rebuttal of, you have supported the crime bill. And if you want to do all these great things for these communities, Why didn't you do them? Why haven't you done them for the last several decades in office? Trump is exactly right. Trump is the anti-establishment, anti-politician, and anti-lack of action. Trump is that character. He resonates with his base there, and he also shows the hypocrisy of the left. Good, strong motivation for the center to move towards Donald Trump. I think this was a good action, and I do think the debate in entirety was a win for Trump. Not necessarily word for word, point by point. I don't necessarily know what I would say there. It wasn't a lot of argument pinpointed. It wasn't a lot of overcoming and getting wrecked per se. But it was, I think, more convincing to the center. If you look at it from a centrist view, a moderate view, a declined state, they would be pulled towards more so Donald Trump than Joe Biden in that last election. And that's really how you could and should summarize who wins the debate. So that is really how I would wrap up the debate. Again, from a centrist perspective, I think people were more drawn to Donald Trump than Joe Biden. If I look at that truly with no prejudice, I honestly believe that. Again, good neck and neck, back and forth, substantive discussion. I don't really want to say that Joe Biden really pulled ahead for decline to states. Donald Trump needed that win for the debate. He at least needed more pull from the moderates to his side for a win in November. So that was good. It was beneficial. It was enjoyable, I would say, to watch. Much more substantive, much more beneficial to the American people. That really is going to wrap up my notes here and our session here, our very first audio and video option for the show, The Glorious Rescue. Normally, during these episodes, we end with an end of show segment. So for about the first 10 to 15 minutes, we discuss the current day-to-day politic. And then in the last 5 to 10 minutes, about the last half of the show, we delve into deeper discussions about American principles, about key figures, books, speeches, writings throughout human history, and how those principles, humans, books, writings, all those different items have influenced our American principles, our American founding, and what we see today. Very, very important. I believe last one was Teach the Speech, and we've talked about Winston Churchill's speeches, some of Abraham Lincoln's. We've talked about famous books. We've gone through the Bill of Rights. We've done all of these deep discussions that not only can you get your very consolidated version of the day-to-day news, curated specifically for you, prioritized so that you just get the top day-to-day stories, but then also you get to delve into a deeper discussion about American principles, the principles that define us, and the principles that will rescue us. So don't forget to tune in on Tuesday for our very next episode of The Glorious Rescue, where we will jump into, again, all of the current events and then an end of show segment. As promised, we did not do so here because we had a little bit more to cover. Again, thank you so much for listening. If you are listening over on our audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatnot, make sure to subscribe, hit that follow button, or leave us a 5-star review. It's always appreciated. On YouTube, you can do the same as well. Hit that subscribe button. Or if you are listening on that audio version, head on over to YouTube, anchor.fm/Josiah Everton, or the link in the bio to my Instagram that will lead you to this YouTube channel. Again, I want to welcome you to the show, welcome you to the video version. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Josiah Everton, and this is The Glorious Rescue.